Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bruce B. Baird, and you're listening to the Productive Dentist Podcast. In this podcast, I will give you everything that I've learned over the last 40 years in dentistry, working with thousands of dentists. I'll tell you, it's not that my way is the only way. It's just one that has worked extremely well for me, and I'd love to share that with you so you too can enjoy the choices and lifestyle that productivity allows. More time for things you love, increased pay, better team relationships, and lowered stress. Let's get into it with this week's episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.
The Kodak study shows if you raise your fees by 20% and your profit is at X, then you're going to increase your profitability by raising your fees. By reducing your fees, you're going to have to do X amount more to net the same amount. Hi, this is Dr. Bruce Baird with the Productive Dentist Podcast. Rated #1 podcast in all of dentistry, 2 out of the last 5 years. So thanks for being on. Hopefully, we're going to pick up a few pearls today. Today, I'm going to be talking about financial arrangements, finance, costs. Is dentistry expensive? Yeah, I mean, it is. Are patients fee sensitive? Are they worried about whether you charge $800 for something or whether you charge $1,200 for something? I mean, a lot of dentists inherently, and I've been one of them, who feel like, that's a lot of money. And your team also, when they're going through financial, ooh, that's a lot of money, but is it worth it? I tell the story about Maggie, my daughter, who's now principal of the elementary school that she went to. I have a couple of kids who are principals of schools, but we were driving down the road. She was probably 11 years old, and I was going to put a veneer on a patient. And she said, "Dad, how much does one of those veneers cost?" And I said, well, I mean, back then, it was like $530, whatever. This is 25 years ago. And she went, "What? Oh my gosh, Dad, that's a ripoff," is what she said. And I'm going, "Honey, what do you mean it's a ripoff?" She goes, "That's a lot." And I said, "Well, let me ask you this. What if I told you I'd take out your front tooth, but you could never replace it, but I'd give you $1,000. Would you do it?" She would go, "Yeah, $1,000? I said, "Baby, every time a guy looks at you, you're going to have no front tooth." And she went, "Oh, okay. Hadn't thought of that." "Yeah, but that's expensive, Dad." And I said, "Well, how much do you think a car costs?" She said, "Well, probably like $3,000. I was like, "Yeah." So we're driving down the road, and I said, "Let me find you a $3,000 car." And I said, "Hey, there's one right there." She said, "Ooh, that's ugly. I don't want to drive that." I said, "Oh, okay. What kind do you pick out a car, honey?" So she picks out one. She goes, "I like that one right there. I go, that's probably 25,000. She went, 25,000? Wow. I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, Dad, I guess $530 is not that much." What we did is we changed the thought process of the patient. Are patients fee sensitive? I say yes. And let me explain that. When the first time I saw the Kodak study shows if you raise your fees by 20% and your profit is at X, then you're going to increase your profitability by raising your fees. By reducing your fees, you're going to have to do X amount more to net the same amount.
Doctor, are you tired of repeating yourself with your team over and over again, and yet you still see treatment walk out the door? If so, you're not alone. The Clinical Calibration Institute, powered by Productive Dentist Academy, is an all-new online platform that unites your team around your philosophy of care, so patients can say yes with confidence and you grow with purpose. Including online curriculum with world-class faculty, monthly live mastermind sessions for each department within your practice, and an online private community, this is your home to grow. Head over to clinicalcalibration.com today to join every member of your team for one very low monthly membership fee. That's clinicalcalibration.com.
And, I was I was in dentistry. I was doing tons of dentistry. In our first year in practice, we did over $1 million in 1984. Now I took home 32 grand, which the year before I'd taken home 28,000 as a captain in the military. So all of a sudden, things changed. I was making more money, but I was working all the time. Financing, when I looked at it, I finally realized, here's old Mr. Johnson, the rancher, and I told him, Mr. Johnson, I said, this tooth needs a crown on it. He goes, how much is it, Doc? I said, $320. This is 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And he said, damn, that's a lot, man, Doc. And I said, yeah. After I read the Codex study, I decided I could raise my fees 68% across the board because I was burned out. This is after 4 years in dentistry. I was doing tons of dentistry, not making any money. And so I said, what am I going to do? I'm burned out. I love dentistry. I loved it in the military, and I get out and it's just a struggle. It's hard. And so I said, well, I'm raising the fees. So I raised them 68% across the board, and I figured out I could lose 98% of my patients and still make the same amount of money. Now, what did people do? The same thing they did when it was 68% less. I told Mr. Johnson, I said, your crown's going to be $480. He goes, $480? Damn, Doc. Then it was $300, and then it was $650. Oh my gosh. Then it was $800. Oh, Jesse James, you're robbing me, Doc. Then it was $1,100. Then it was $1,500. It doesn't matter what I told them. Are they fee sensitive? Yeah, I guess they are. I had my pool heater go out. My pool guy comes up and he goes, Doc, I said, your pool heater went out. And I said, oh man, okay, well, how much is it? He goes, what's 500? He's holding this little piece like this, a little sensor. And I said, 500 for that little thing? He said, well, that doesn't count labor. That's another 250, be about 750 to 800. And I was like, oh, wow, man, I'm whining and bitching and. And he said, well, you don't have to do it, Doc. And I said, oh, no, I want my pool heated. So what I realized in that moment was that everybody's fee sensitive when you don't know what you're talking about. It's like when you go to get a car repaired and they tell you it's going to be X amount. You go, oh, okay. Wow, I didn't know. So don't get hung up with price. Think more about affordability. Okay. And so the communication skills that we use and the way that we go through our financing is some patients can pay cash. One of the things I've always wondered, and I don't know if there's a good answer for it or not, but somebody pays you cash and let's say they use Care Credit, for instance. They're going to use Care Credit and Care Credit is going to pay you cash. They're going to take about a 10% discount on that. And your team is going to sell them on Care Credit because it has interest-free financing for a year or for 2 years. And Care Credit has done an amazing job of training docs and teams to use that as their method of financing. It's certainly better than you doing your own financing and trying to send patients bills from Granbury Dental Center or Bob's Dental Hut or whatever it is, because they think you're rich anyway. So when they get the payment across the board, it's going to go in the garbage, or they're just going to wait to pay it if they can't. So what we did is we set up specific financial arrangements. I started a company called Compassionate Finance 15 years ago. It's hard to believe. And it was an in-house financing, but it wasn't my house. We formed it so that any dentist could use us, and it looked as though it was a third-party financing. And we could approve lots and lots of people. If you think about it, most people could afford $100, 150. And it had interest associated with it. It's not this interest-free stuff. But it had interest, and the patients, and a lot of doctors say, oh, my patients don't want to pay 13%. They don't want to pay 9%. Yeah, they don't really care. People, if you focus on the percent interest, you're going to lose a lot of business. What you focus on are affordable payments. We found that if a patient's payment could be $110 or less, they had a 98% chance of paying, no matter what their credit rating was. That number's gone up in the last few years. But still, the bottom line is the truth. We need to find ways to make our dentistry more affordable. So we put it all on a form, and at PDA, our coaches can show you exactly how to do it. And you get cash up front, you get a discount. The funny part is the ones who pay cash up front could pay you cash up front without a discount. With some of our docs that use compassionate finance, and now it's, they found that they only had two options. You have monthly payments or you pay cash. Oh, I'll pay cash. No questions about a discount or anything else. And so what we found was some docs quit doing that. They quit taking a 7 or 4% bookkeeper discount, 3% credit card, whatever. And what we found was that most of the patients just paid. Some people need monthly payments. They need affordable monthly payments. If you take $8,000, how many times have you done a $9,000 treatment plan and Care Credit or a third party approves you for $3,000, approves your patient? How much dentistry do you do? Do you have other options? Most docs have no other options. They do $3,000 worth of work. Well, guess what? What about all the patients that come in that aren't credit worthy? They can't get credit. They've not been good stewards of their money in the past, but they make their payments. For the most part, they make their payments on time. 95% of Americans, if they have a contract to pay, they're going to pay. It's the 5% that hose you. So the whole premise behind compassionate finance was, yeah, we're going to have some people that don't make their payments, but the interest off the ones who do make their payments offset the losses. And so that in itself is the reason we came up with it. And like I said, we've done over $1 billion in financing for dentists and patients across the country over the years. So we have a sheet. It has cash up front and it has financing options. It may be a down payment. One is financing. If you want to continue to use third party, that's fine. I wouldn't, but it's fine. The other option is we could have convenient monthly payments as much as whatever. You can do $6,000, $7,000 worth of work and have payments in the $150 to $200 range. Well, guess what? Most dentists, their average treatment plans are $1,500. Why? Because they're afraid the patient's going to say no to the treatment. So they're like, okay, let's just do $1,000. It's the Crown of the Year Club. You can't do comprehensive exams. You can't do that stuff. And we're going to be talking about all this stuff during our Clinical Calibration Institute sessions. And you'll get to talk to other docs who have been doing the exact same thing that we've been doing. And instead of producing $475 an hour like the national average, some of our docs are producing $2,000 an hour, $2,500 an hour. I don't think if I asked any of them, would you like to go back to $475? I think they would say, forget it, man. I ain't doing that, because it's stressful, because you're not doing comprehensive dentistry. And if you're not communicating, like we talked in our last session, well, now you got people pissed off and they're pissed off about the money. And then you're not happy as a dentist. So let's get all that stuff cleared up. But let's find a way to help train your front office, to train your chair side, your treatment coordinator who does all of our scheduling, to get your associate, to get you, to get your office manager, all of you on the exact same beat, because you can dance if you're all on the same beat. If everybody's playing their own music, unfortunately, you're not going to enjoy dentistry. It's just not going to be near as much fun. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, the Productive Dentist Podcast. Tell your friends, send them a message, send them a note about it. We would love to have them come join us at Clinical Calibration Institute. Look forward to our next time together. Thanks.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe. Pass it along to a friend. Give us a like on iTunes and Spotify, or drop me an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. Don't forget to check out other podcasts from the Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentistpodcast.com. Join me again next week for another episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.